The job of a Major League Baseball player is to help his team win games. Baseball is a game filled with statistics, but ultimately there is one statistic that matters to Major League teams: wins. There is only one common statistic that ties directly to specific team wins: pitcher wins. And that statistic is under increasing fire with the movement on social media to #KillTheWin, as the kids speak these days, and for generally good reasons. Here's a trivia question. Who was the winning pitcher in Game 7 of the 2016 World Series? The answer is Aroldis Chapman, who entered the game in the bottom of the 8th inning, with the Cubs leading 6-3, and proceeded to give up an RBI double and a 2-run home run to the first two batters he faced, leaving the Cubs and Indians tied at 6. How in the world does that performance earn you a win? Answer: Chapman was the last Cubs pitcher before their game-winning rally in the top of the 10th inning. So the pitcher win doesn't always make a lot of sense. But the object of the game is to win baseball games. Doesn't it make sense to have a player statistic that ties to actual team wins and losses? So who deserved to win Game 7 of the 2016 World Series? Kyle Hendricks. He pitched 4 2/3 innings and left with the Cubs leading 5-1. Jon Lester. He pitched 3 innings and left with the Cubs leading 6-3. But why limit ourselves to pitchers? What about Dexter Fowler, who led off the game with a solo home run to give the Cubs their first lead of the game? Or Ben Zobrist, whose 10th inning double gave the Cubs their last lead of the game? Or any of the 8 other Cubs who had neither an RBI or a run scored or both in the game? But why do we have to pick just one? The problem with wins isn't giving players credit for helping their team win. The problem is that not everybody is getting their fair share of the credit. The solution? Player wins and player losses, or P wins and P losses, which divide credit for wins and losses across all of the players on a team based on what they did in that particular game. P wins and P losses are calculated play by play within a game, such that the players on the winning team earn a combined 2 P wins and 1 P loss, and players on the losing team earn 1 P win and 2 P losses. And here are the P wins and P losses for all 18 Cubs who appeared in Game 7 of the 2016 World Series. Who deserved credit for that win? A lot of players. But at the top, Ben Zobrist, Kyle Hendricks, and Dexter Fowler. And at the bottom of the list, right where he belongs, Aroldis Chapman. As I said, P wins and P losses are calculated play by play within a game. The heart of calculating P wins and P losses is win probability, which was invented by Eldon and Harlan Mills and described in their 1970 book Player Win Averages. Win probability evaluates the probability of the batting team winning the game given the inning, number of outs, number and position of base runners, and the difference in score. The change in win probability within a single plate appearance is attributed to the players involved in the play: batter, pitcher, base runners, fielders. Win probability has gained some popularity in the baseball world via win probability advancement, or WPA, which are tracked online by both Baseball Reference and Fangraphs. Player wins and losses improve on WPA in several important ways. First, P wins and P losses are credited to batters, base runners, pitchers, and fielders, whereas traditional WPA is credited only to batters and pitchers. Second, player wins and losses are normalized so that all games are worth 3 player decisions per team: 2 wins and 1 loss for the players on the winning team, and 1 win and 2 losses for the players on the losing team. Adjusting win probability at the game level in this way reveals some interesting insights, the most significant of which is that raw win probability overvalues late inning clutch situations at the expense of early inning events which either set up the late inning clutch situations or eliminate the need for them. This has important implications, especially in the valuation of starting pitchers versus relief pitchers. As an example of the difference between P-wins and WPA, let's compare the last two games of the 2016 World Series. Game 7 of the 2016 World Series went 10 innings with a final score of 8-7. For Baseball Reference, the total positive win probability associated with this game was plus 2.43 wins. The most valuable player of Game 7 was Ben Zobrist, who went 1 for 5 with a run scored and an RBI. Zobrist's one hit was an RBI double in the top of the 10th inning to give the Cubs a 7-6 lead. Baseball Reference credits Zobrist with a WPA of .313. As I showed earlier, Zobrist is credited with .19 net P-wins. The Cubs won Game 6 of the 2016 World Series 9-3. The Cubs took the lead in Game 6 on a home run by Kris Bryant, who was the third batter of the game, and they never trailed from that point onward. For Baseball Reference, the total positive win probability associated with this game was only .66 wins. The most valuable player of Game 6 was Addison Russell, who went 2 for 5 with 1 run scored and 6 RBI. Russell's 2 hits were a 2-run double in the top of the first inning to give the Cubs a 3-0 lead, and a grand slam in the third inning to make the score 7-0. Baseball Reference credits Russell with a WPA of .254, which is 20% lower than Zobrist's Game 7 WPA. But Player Won-Loss records credit Russell with .58 net wins, or approximately 3 times as many as Ben Zobrist. Russell's early inning Game 6 heroics allowed the Cubs to coast to a relatively easy 9-3 victory, in which there were very few high-pressure moments late in the game. In contrast, Zobrist's tie-breaking 10th inning double was only as clutch as it was because of all that came before it. From Fowler's leadoff home run through home runs by Javi Baez and David Ross, mostly strong pitching by Hendricks and Lester, up through Schwarber's single leading off the 10th inning, and of course, including Rajay Davis's home run off of Aroldis Chapman. It seems clear to me that P-wins are correct, that Addison Russell, who contributed to 6 of the Cubs' 9 runs in Game 6, deserves a larger share of the credit for the Cubs' win in Game 6 than Ben Zobrist, who contributed to only 2 of the Cubs' 8 runs in Game 7. P-wins by game can be added up to evaluate players at the season and career level as well. Because the players on a team earn 3 player decisions per team game, season and career totals for P-wins end up on a similar scale to traditional pitcher wins. The next slide shows P-wins and P-losses for the key players on the 2016 Cubs, as well as traditional pitcher wins. Only the pitchers have traditional wins, but with P-wins, so do Kris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo and Addison Russell and the rest of them. Everybody who helped the Cubs win 103 regular season games that season. Because of the way P-wins are calculated, raw P-wins and P-losses are not necessarily the best way to compare players. For example, pitchers are generally well below average as hitters. This is a big part of the reason why Jason Hammel and John Lackey had fewer P-wins than P-losses in 2016. But virtually all pitchers are poor hitters. So Lackey's poor hitting that season didn't put the Cubs at much of a disadvantage. And in fact, while Jason Hammel was below average among all major league hitters, he was actually one of the top 10 hitting pitchers in the National League in 2016. Pitchers are the obvious example, but there are differences in the average hitting of other positions as well. To compare players across positions then, I calculate positional averages and calculate a statistic, PWOPA, P wins over positional average. I also calculate P wins over replacement level, or PWORL, where I set replacement level 1 standard deviation below positional average. Here, we see Jason Hamill has more P losses than P wins, but was nevertheless above average with a positive PWOPA. Another good comparison is between shortstop Addison Russell and second base outfielder and World Series MVP Ben Zobrist. Both players had a regular season record that rounds to 20-16. But Russell beat Zobrist in PWOPA by a half win, 2.1 to 1.6, because shortstops are not expected to hit as well as second basemen and outfielders, and are better fielders on average. So Russell's record is more impressive than Zobrist when put in the context of the positions the two of them played. So far, P wins and P losses are tied to team performance. Hence, a player's P wins will depend on the context in which he performed, including the performance of his teammates. There is, of course, a strong case to be made that it is fairer to players to compare them within a neutral context. To accommodate this, I calculate a set of expected player win-loss records, E wins and E losses, which control for context. These records are not tied to specific team wins or team losses, but reflect what we might have expected a player's record to look like given his overall seasonal performance. For a league season as a whole, total E wins will equal total P wins in aggregate, as well as by component and subcomponent. But at the game level, total expected decisions of the players on the team need not equal exactly 3, nor will a team's total E wins and E losses equal that team's P wins and P losses, even at the seasonal level. The next slide shows EWOPA and EWAR for the key players on the 2016 Cubs. The slide also shows WAR totals, wins above replacement, as calculated and presented at baseballreference.com. For reasons that are explained in my book, one needs to add EWOPA and EWARL to put my numbers on a comparable scale to WAR. An interesting comparison here is Anthony Rizzo versus Kris Bryant. Bryant won the NL MVP award and beat Rizzo fairly decisively in WAR. The EWOPA and EWARL numbers tell a similar story. Bryant was approximately 2 wins better than Rizzo. But returning to numbers from a previous slide, Rizzo beat Bryant in PWOPA, 2.9 to 2.6, and in PWARL, 4.1 to 4.0, although the latter is essentially a tie. Bryant had the better season stats, but because of the timing of his performance, Rizzo had a slightly greater impact on the Cubs' actual final record. So, why do we need a new measure of player value? With as many baseball statistics as there are, old and new, why do we need player wins and losses? The primary reason why we need player wins and losses is because they fill a niche that is otherwise unfilled. Player value that is tied to specific team wins and losses. Most sabermetric baseball statistics are tied to runs and then converted from runs to theoretical wins. But it turns out, starting from a different, better place, namely actual wins, reveals a host of fascinating new insights.